The following podcast is a Jill Divine Media production.
Christianity has become known for judgy people, strange words, ancient stories, confusing rules, and a members-only mindset. This is why I stayed away from the church for so long, but it's not supposed to be that way. I'm Jill Divine, a former radio personality with 3 tattoos, a love for a good tequila, and who's never read the entire Bible. Yet, here I am, hosting a podcast about faith. The Normal Goes a Long Way podcast is your home for real conversations with real people using real language about how faith and real life intersect. Welcome to the conversation. Hi there, and welcome to Normal Goes a Long Way. I'm your host, Jill Divine, and it's time for part 2 of the conversation between Laura and Keeya.
When I think in general of human trafficking, I think of like somebody who is being held against their will. But more and more, we're learning that is not the case. Like in your circumstance, you were free to come and go, but you didn't feel like you had the resources to exit the situation. So just because someone looks like they're having a good time and having fun in this environment does not mean that it's not abuse, because if they're underage, it is abuse.
Right, exactly. In the state of Texas, you have to be 18 to be considered a non-minor. And so if you are under the age of 18, you are not able to consent to sex, first of all. You're under the age of consent. And so it is automatically illegal, right? And so my story and my situation is one way that this happens. But you do not have to be without money and resources and means in order to be mentally trapped into this lifestyle, right? And so we have to look at the process. We have to look at the means, and we have to look at the end. This is the goal and the game of the trafficker. So first of all, in the process of recruiting, they're going to groom you in some way. There's going to be something that they do, some need that they provide. They're looking for low-hanging fruits. They're looking for vulnerabilities. And vulnerabilities do not have a socioeconomic status attached to them. So they're going to recruit or harbor or move or obtain your person, your image. Okay, so this was in 1997 with me. Now, one of the ways and means of trafficking is through images, all right, pornographic images that are uploaded to the dark web, etc. But so you're going to look at the recruiting process. You're going to look at, they're looking for and searching for vulnerabilities, okay? And they're going to become everything that you need. You have a bad relationship, they're going to be good for you. No one listens to you, they're going to listen, right? Then the means, force, fraud, or coercion. Okay, so it's very possible that you get caught up into sex trafficking by force. Okay, that's like you would see in the movie Taken. You know,
Right.
They knock you out, they drug you, they drag you, you're gone, you're missing. Okay, but that's not always the case. There are many parties that you might attend from someone who is setting up and looking for someone who would be the next victim, because this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Let's not forget that. And so, I think of college campuses. I think of high school parties where they're drugging individuals and performing acts, videotaping it, uploading it. That's also sex trafficking. Okay, or they're using text messages where the so-called boyfriend or girlfriend is requesting images, right? And then they use those images also as a way of revenge to say, hey, if you don't do these other things, I'm going to send this to your parents or to this person or that person, or I'm going to spread this all over the web, or whatever the case may be. And so I can go into so many different nuances of how this works, but they're going to either force you somehow, they're going to, be fraudulent in their luring of you, or they're going to find a way to coerce you into doing these things. But it just depends on the situation and the environment. And their end goal is basically either involuntary servitude, okay? There's debt bondage, because let's understand that this happens not just in the U.S., but it happens globally. or flat out slavery, right? I would say that I was in the category of slavery. That was sex slavery. I was living in this particular place, even though I could, quote unquote, come and go as I please because of all the psychological and physical abuse and threats of death. It was slavery, right?
Yeah.
And so they're going to force you into some form of commercial sex act. Okay, that's another way. So there's all these different ways that this happens. My story, I was vulnerable as being a teenage runaway, but this is not the only way that it happens. So you've seen some of in the news. You've seen the Epstein case. Okay, this is not
Mhm.
a situation where you're dealing with people who are uneducated and they are. At the bottom of the rung of society as far as socioeconomics, you're actually looking at people who, need a better quality product. And so they're going after the college students and they're going after, the women and men, because this is not just an issue with women and girls. This is also an issue with boys and men, but they're going after, quote unquote, prime stock. So
Yeah.
it's a very difficult, complex situation, but the end goal is money. And with humans, with drugs, once you use the drugs, they're gone. All right. So they're always looking to find more drugs or create more drugs to sell. Right. But when you talk about a human, you're talking about an individual who, in some cases, you think about, some of the sex slavery in Southeast Asia, where these women are literally in cages and hundreds of times a day until they die. Their life expectancy when they enter is about 8 years, and then they die. And they start off sometimes even as little kids where this is happening, and it's not uncommon to find them on the side of the road, discarded after their bodies gave out because they could no longer be used again. So this is a very complex issue, and that a lot of research has been put into, but there's a lot more that needs to be done. I could give you statistics, but you can research the statistics. I'm just one of them, right? I'm one of those who has had this experience. But by the grace of God, I'm a survivor of it. This all happened to me in 1997 is when I made my escape.
Yes, tell us about that. Tell us about how you finally got out of it and what role God played in that and how he has worked in your life since then.
Right, right. So I actually got out because I had a nervous breakdown. Okay, that was a lot to go through in a short period of time from 92 to 1997. Excuse me, 1991 to 1997. That was a lot to go through in a short period of time. And there's only so much that the mind and body can take before it shuts down. And so I did have a nervous breakdown. And in that nervous breakdown, I was able to get help. And that's where the pause in my life happened. And I really do believe that I experienced all of those horrible things. Um, I don't know why I experienced it. I just know that I did experience it. And what that did with my faith is when I moved back to Dallas, Texas, it was my brother and his wife at the time that actually moved, went to New Jersey where I was living and signed me out of the psych hospital and brought me back, right? And my brother, one of the first conversations that he had, he said, I know you've been through a lot. Here's the other thing. I lied to my mother and my brother about the lifestyle I was actually leading. And because I was not living in the same state with them most of the time, and even when I was with my mom, I told a lot of lies because there was a lot of shame involved. But once I was in that hospital, I fully disclosed everything that I had been through. And so my brother allowed me to he kind of nursed me back to health, basically. And he said, I know you've been through a lot of things, but one thing we're going to do is like we did when we were little, we're going to continue to go to church. And I agreed because I was just in a mess. And church had always been a place of comfort for me, right? And it's in that setting that I was able to rededicate my life to Christ. I understand that's not necessarily a theme that when you talk about rededicating your life in the Lutheran setting, my husband and I are in the Lutheran church. That's maybe not quite how they would put it, but I spent more of my life charismatic, and so I would say once I rededicated my life to God and I just listened to the love that was poured out to me in that setting and responded to that, I was able to pivot, and I really feel like God was instrumental in helping to bring the healing process into my life. And I found that through my faith in Christ.
And I remember in the book, there was a particular moment you wrote about when you were at your brother's and you were having, like, I don't know if it was a hallucination or something, that somebody was coming after you
Yeah.
in the dark. And I remember that you said you just started crying out to Jesus. Talk a little bit about that moment.
Absolutely. And so, and I'll have to backtrack just a little bit. I was in a relationship with a man much older than me. He was about 41 years of age when I was 22. And, he was a sugar daddy type, if you will, right? He was also a warlock. And so, this is the spiritual side. The other spiritual side to this was, in following him, I basically dibbled and dabbled in the occult. And when I broke away, had the nervous breakdown, and went back home, I felt as though, in addition to the mental illness I had been labeled with, that there was a very spiritual aspect um, to those experiences. Right? I believe totally and wholeheartedly that my experience was the devil's plan for my life and what he wanted to see to still kill and destroy from my life. And so, in that moment in my brother's living room, I remember having just a lot of problems trying to sleep, right? And I would be tormented in dreams, etc. Some of that was the medication. I feel like some of that was also spiritual. And
Mm-hmm.
I had a moment where it was like I heard the voice of his dog in the back room. Okay, not the voice, but the sound of his dog panting in the back room. And he had a beautiful chow. And I was thinking, why is he up and stirring around? And why can I hear him so loud, first of all? And then I just realized I heard that voice or that sound amplify. And it sounded as if it was coming down the hallway. And I was immediately stricken with this sheer fear, wondering, okay, this is not normal. This doesn't make any sense. And again, it was an amplified sound. And so I just had an interaction that I felt was highly spiritual. I don't believe that it was a hallucination per se. I didn't see anything, but I just felt a very demonic presence in the room. And I remember at that moment being so terrified and crying out to God. And this is not just being in the church setting, but in that moment, it was about me and Jesus. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, Lord,
Right.
if you're really real, then I need you to show up right now because I don't know what's going to happen. I'm terrified. I don't know what to do. I had words similar to that. And I just remember literally feeling, and I used to hear the old people say, oh, God will bless you. Feel him from the top of your head to the soles of your feet, because I grew up very charismatic environments. And so I literally felt a warm sensation from the crown of my head, literally, go all the way down my body to my feet. And I felt the peace of God. And I knew it was the presence of God. And I actually drifted off into a very deep sleep. When I woke up the next morning, it was as if I was healed. It was as if it was so surreal that the birds were chirping extra sweet. The sun was beaming extra beautiful. And it was truly the beginning process of my healing journey. And so I began from that point just serving the Lord wholeheartedly. I felt if I could serve the enemy wholeheartedly, and if I've been through all of these things that made me feel hopeless, now that I have hope, I'm going to serve wholeheartedly. And that's exactly what I've spent the rest of my life doing.
There's such hope in that. And I hope that everyone listening knows that that same grace and healing power that you experienced is available to them. And that in our darkest moments, crying out to Jesus is sometimes the only thing and also the best thing that we can do. And I'm so glad that that you've been able to feel his mercy and his grace and his healing in your life. What happened next? Because that's kind of where you ended the book.
Right.
And I was like, but wait a minute. I know that, like, you're my age, so like 20 years has passed since then. what has
Oh,
what have you been up to in your life, and what is your calling right now?
absolutely. And I will quickly touch on this because that sounds like a beautiful fairy tale almost, that there was the fact that she lived happily ever after. But that is not entirely true. So
Right, right. It's
life,
never that simple.
it's never that simple. I have to say, and I have to mention the importance of mental health care. I have to
Yes.
let you know that I at first rejected it. For many, many years, I felt like the church was enough. Doing good works was enough. Getting involved in the church, that was enough. And it took me literally about 15 years of living that way before I bottomed out and realized that's not enough, that I do need God plus a therapist. And I need a therapist just like, you take your car in for checkups at certain times and you get your oil changes. I need a therapist on speed dial to be a
Yes.
part of my life for the rest of my life. And so the journey has taken even a more in depth level of healing has taken place. But in between that, right? So I guess it was 2000. Yes, in 2000, the church that I was attending, which was a mega church in the Dallas, Texas area, I remember just giving myself wholeheartedly to, I wanted to be a part of missions, and I got involved in an internship program called the Master's Commission, and I dedicated 2 years of my life into learning about Christian service, being an intern in this church, this 21st century, upwardly mobile church that was making impact in the local area and around the world. And I was able to travel and, around, do conferences, and pretty much intern from A to Z in the different businesses that this pastor had. And so that's where I met my husband. And so that was in 2001 by the time I met him. And, we shared a lot of the same interests, and we quickly, I guess, fell in love. And then we got married, and he was an associate pastor at this church. And so it was a very odd couple, I felt, but it's what happened in my life. And so that was part of my redemption. We went on to have
Mhm.
3 beautiful children. I have Christian, who's my 16-year-old, Ajane, who's my 19-year-old, John, who we call JJ, he's the third, who is my 20-year-old. Shanae and JJ are in college. Christian's in his 11th grade year. And we have been considered more recently local missionaries in the Lutheran Church, Missouri Synod. But throughout that entire process of when we got married in 2002, and we've been married for 20 years as of April the 21st, we've been in ministry, more youth ministry than anything. And more recently, we actually have been in ministry with a mission that is called Mosaic Mission Network. And we resource, through the Lutheran Church, we resource Liberian pastors by helping them to obtain grants to go to seminary and to come up under the denomination of the Lutheran Church and to serve that particular community. So my husband is from Liberia, West Africa, and that's how that
Okay.
came about. So that's what we do ministerially. As far as advocacy goes, I actually, of course, use my voice to advocate for those who are trapped in human trafficking and sex trafficking by the use of my story. I also do workshops, facilitate workshops for other anti-human trafficking organizations, and pretty much anyone who will hire me to come in front of their people to express to them the importance of educating themselves on this issue, right? And so I also currently work at a safe house in the North Texas area. So I work directly with the population of women who are coming out of sex trafficking and domestic violence situations and restarting their lives and gaining the necessary life skills. That's Bochi's place. And so I'm very grateful to have the opportunity now to make impact. And I'm really new on that journey of advocacy, right? And the more that you learn, the more that you realize that there's a need.
Hmm.
So I'm just dedicated for the rest of my life, I believe. I feel that this is a calling to bring awareness and make impact in this space. I can't do it all. I just do my part, right? I do my part by sharing and educating.
Well, and thank you for doing that because it's hard to share your story. All of us have stories, and all of us have darkness that we've walked through, and it's tempting to keep the darkness hidden. But God, when we bring it to the light and use it for His glory, it's amazing what He can do with our stories. So I so appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability, and especially what you just said, about the importance of mental health. I also went through a nervous breakdown and understand the journey of, you know, finally getting to the place where you realize you can't get through it on your own, and that I think my therapists have been angels sent from heaven.
Right.
I think everybody should have a therapist. Everybody. Um,
Absolutely.
we all have things that we need to heal from. And so thank you for sharing that it hasn't always been easy, but you are walking hand in hand with Jesus, and that makes all the difference. Um, I think to close, I'd like to ask you, what would you say to the church? And by the church, I mean the whole body of Christ, all of those of us who call ourselves followers of Jesus, when it comes to this issue of human trafficking, sex trafficking. What should Christians know and do so that we can put this evil to rest?
Absolutely. That's a great question, Laura. I would say, number one, I believe that it is our responsibility. I believe it's all of our callings to be the hands and feet of Christ to the broken and downtrodden. All right. And so uh, I believe that we have a responsibility to make ourselves, once we are made aware of the situation, to look for solutions. Solutions might look like going into Google. This is a really easy step. Go into Google and put human trafficking statistics in my area. Put your zip code in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and find out, make yourself knowledgeable about the issue. If that seems too overwhelming, then go into Google and type anti human trafficking organizations and then put your zip code in there and get connected. Find out how you can donate your time, your talent, your treasure to this work. Some
Mm-hmm.
people, this will really resonate with you, and you'll feel like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. No one should suffer from such a heinous crime. That right there is God calling you to action. That is God saying, this matters to you because it matters to me. Do something about it. And so find an organization that's already doing the work. You can go in, you can read and learn so much. It's so overwhelming. There's so much information, but many of these organizations have materials that they can give you that are free and downloadable. They have classes and lunch and learns, and they are willing to come out to your organization or to your church and do trainings, right? So that you can know the ways that you can get involved.
Mm-hmm.
Many local law enforcement have task force. Okay. And so you can find out what's happening in your state, right? And you can find out what the laws are in your state. Okay. When it comes down to, how can the church have influence here? Well, there's a political influence. Who are we electing into office that are passing particular bills that are affecting this demographic of people. So there's multiple ways that you can get involved. I would say definitely do that. I am one individual. I'm not an organization as of yet. I'm an individual who speaks on this issue. You can invite individuals like myself to come and speak to your group and to give more information and get a game plan going. I do consulting in churches and get a game plan going on how we can start a ministry that would reach this demographic. And so the issue is broad, but we're capable. We're able.
Yes. And I think it starts with exactly what you said. It starts with awareness, and it starts with a recognition that it is going to take every one of us standing up for love and freedom and respect of every individual to make a dent in what has become an enormous hidden problem in this world, in our country, in our state. And it's up to us to bring it to the light and to not pretend that it's not happening. So thank you again for those instructive words. I would challenge everyone listening to do exactly what Keeya said. Type in human trafficking, sex trafficking, and your zip code, and see what kind of organizations pop up as far as advocacy and help, and also be aware of what those statistics look like near you. I'd also encourage each of you to buy Keeya's book. It is called 1000 Elsewhere, a true survivor story. And I know it's available on Amazon. That's where I got it. I read the Kindle version. Is that where you recommend people purchase it? Or do you have another place that's better?
They can purchase it either on Amazon or they can purchase through my website. And if they'd like a signed copy, just email me info@KEEYA, V as in Victor, AWAR.com, and put your request in there and I'll send you out a signed copy.
Amazing. Yes, please visit Keeya's website for more details. We will link it in the show notes. And Keeya, I think that I'm going to be inviting you to come speak. I would love to. I have 2 teenage daughters, and I would love to allow them to hear directly from you about some of those warning signs to be aware of as they go off to college and as they go through high school. I think the more we can educate our youth as well, the better off that will be. So thanks again for joining us here at Normal Goes a Long Way. We wish you all the best on your ministry and with your family. And we're just thanking Jesus that he stepped into your life and that you have clung to him and walked with him for these past years. And he's doing incredible things through you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such an honor. And I'm just excited about what you all are doing as well. And I'm so glad to be a part of it.
After hearing this conversation between Laura and Keeya, it has made me realize that there are so many things out there that I don't know anything about. And it's my responsibility to educate myself. And there are so many organizations that I don't even know exist. I encourage you to do the same thing that I'm going to do and learn more about human trafficking. And with January being Human Trafficking Awareness Month, let's do what we can to help fight this. Let's support those that Keeya mentioned in the episode with Laura. Let's just do better. You can follow along on our social media accounts at Normal Goes a Long Way on Facebook and Instagram, and also at normalgoesalongway.com. Thank you so much for taking a listen and doing what you can to help others. Have a great day.